I never thought I'd be the kind of person who missed the end of the world. More specifically, I never thought I wouldn't notice the signs. I always assumed I'd be the one who saw it coming. I'd read enough post-apocalyptic fiction, watched enough disaster movies. If anything like that ever actually happened, I'd be ready. What I never accounted for was being too busy to look up. I used to be the type who spent hours on forums picking apart collapse scenarios. Pull one thread and the whole thing unravels. That was before Sophie. Before the freelance editing work that paid just enough to keep the lights on and not $1 more. Before I stopped having the luxury of thinking about the end of the world. Because my world was already ending. Quietly. One overdue invoice at a time. The end of the world, it turns out, feels a lot like every other Tuesday. The night before everything started, for me anyway, I got another rush job in my inbox. The subject line said, "Urgent, please format by EOD." It was 200 pages of someone's self-published memoir, which read like it had been written by a person who had never read a book but had strong feelings about their childhood. I cleaned it up as best I could, deleted my own comments, and sent it back. They were paying, after all. By evening, I noticed Sophie was sick. Flushed cheeks, hot forehead. I stayed up most of the night with the baby thermometer and the children's Tylenol, measuring out the right dose by the little plastic syringe, pink and grape-scented. In the morning, I called the pediatrician's after-hours line and got a home visit. The doctor who showed up looked nearly as bad as I felt. Gray around the edges, moving like someone running on nothing. She mentioned in passing that her whole clinic was overwhelmed, that they'd called in staff on their days off, that she'd been on since yesterday. I nodded, wrote down her instructions, walked her to the door. I didn't think much about it. I had my own sick kid to worry about. By the time Sophie's fever finally broke that afternoon, and I'd nearly made it through the manuscript, I decided to check the forums. That's when I found out the world had shifted, in exactly the way Stephen King would have written it, and exactly the way I'd always assumed I'd be the first to notice. The posts were short, typed in all caps, full of typos. People couldn't reach family members who'd left for work that morning. Videos were circulating, shaky, phone camera footage of people moving in tight groups, slow and wrong, towards the lens. Someone was typing their last post as something pounded against their front door, their wooden front door, which wasn't going to hold. The TV said the same thing, eventually, though for hours, none of the networks would call it what it was. Jane_Patrick, November 19th, 10:21 a.m. My neighbor attacked her kid in the hallway this morning. I watched it happen. She just leaned against the wall like she was dizzy, and then she went for him. Please be careful out there. Don't open your door. If you have anything to defend yourself with, keep it close. Zvezdochka, November 19th, 11:15 a.m. There are two of them in the parking lot below my window. I thought they were drunk at first. Then I found my husband's binoculars. One of them has, I don't know how to describe it, like something is hanging out of him. The news isn't covering any of this. White Stripe, November 19th, 11:28 a.m. Does anyone seriously still think the government is going to help us? They're already in their bunkers. They were always going to let us rot. The official statement said everything was under control. Public transit had been suspended for safety reasons. Authorities were working to resolve the situation. It would all be over in a few days. I sat at my desk and stared at the screen and thought, I've read this exact scenario 100 times. I'd always assumed I'd be ready, that I'd have a plan, that I'd recognize this moment the instant it arrived. Instead, I'd spent the last 18 hours measuring out grape-flavored Tylenol and arguing with a PDF's formatting. Maybe it was a dream. The logic felt about right for one. What made it real was Sophie waking up and crying. I picked her up, went to the window. just in time to watch two men take down our building's property manager in the parking lot below. It was fast, and then slow, and then she stood up again and walked away in the same direction they had gone. Romero was right. When the victim dies, they stop being food. They become something else. Sophie pulled away and made a small sound, like a kitten. I held her tighter. She was the only thing I had. The only thing I'd ever really valued. I would give everything I had for her future. It was starting to look like there wasn't going to be one, for anyone.
November 24th. There's one in the hallway outside the stairwell door. I think it came up in the elevator when the elevators were still running, and now it can't figure out how to leave our floor. It can smell us, I think. Whenever someone gets close to check the peephole, it throws itself against the door. We try to move quietly. It doesn't matter. It knows we're here. Knows there's food on the other side of the door. Canned food, as far as it's concerned. We're the prize inside. I think I'm starting to lose it a little. We all are. 5 days ago, I inventoried everything in my kitchen. Canned beans, canned tuna, canned soup, pasta, rice, a shelf of bottled water. I'd always hated the tap water in this building, so I kept a supply. My parents used to make fun of me for it. I can't reach my parents. I've tried their landline, both cell phones. Nothing. The lines were jammed for the first few days. Like New Year's Eve, that particular kind of busy signal. And now, there's just silence. I keep telling myself their town is small, no major transit hub. It probably got there slower. I tell myself this. From what I've pieced together from the forums, the first confirmed cases were in New York City. The chaos at JFK started the night of November 13th. I didn't look up from my work until the 19th. 6 days. I missed 6 days. November 29th. Power went out about a week ago. Water 2 days after that. I'd kept the bathtub full, all the pots, everything I could find. It won't last forever. It's getting cold. The heat stopped working days ago, and outside it's barely above freezing. I've pulled out every blanket I own. I hold Sophie against me, wrapped in my coat. She's still cold. So am I. My neighbors on this floor, an older couple, have started knocking on my door sometimes. Not often. They're worried about their son. He left for class on the 18th and never came back. They don't know if he found somewhere safe or if he's out there now. We don't talk much. We just sit on opposite sides of the hallway sometimes and listen to each other breathe. It helps a little. December 8th. My neighbor tried to go down the stairs today. He said he wanted to check how far down they were clear. He took a piece of metal he'd pulled off a chair leg. He said he'd be careful. He came back. He said the stairwell was packed below the 3rd floor. Standing still in the dark, saving energy. He said he got out fast. He said he was fine. He hugged his wife. She made him promise never to do it alone again. December 9th. He wasn't fine. I don't know when it happened exactly. Sometime in the night. I heard sounds through the wall this morning. I recognized them. I won't write what they were. Their door hasn't opened since. Sophie and I are alone now. December 15th. Last candle. It was a gift. One of those decorative ones shaped like a locomotive. A Polar Express thing, red and gold. I always meant to use it at Christmas. I wish it were a real train. I'd put Sophie on it, and we'd go somewhere far from here. Somewhere that smelled like other people's cooking, and didn't have scratching sounds coming through the walls. Sophie cries most of the time now. She's lost weight. What I can give her isn't enough anymore. The cold inside the apartment is below freezing. The building is dying. No power, no water, no heat. It's become something like the things outside, just waiting to finish falling. December 21st. The last of the food. The last few cans were all bad.
Bloated lids, wrong smell. I threw them down the garbage chute. 2 options now. Stay here and wait. Try the stairs. I don't know which is worse. My head isn't working right anymore. The one thing I keep coming back to. In the movies, extreme cold slows them down. Stops them entirely sometimes. It's been -15 outside for the last few days. The ones I can see from the window aren't moving, just humped shapes under the snow. If the same is true inside the stairwell, if they've slowed down enough, we might be able to get through. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put on every layer I own. Something thick enough to be hard to bite through. I'm going to take the hammer from the toolbox under the sink. I'm going to put Sophie in the carrier, facing in, tucked against my chest, and I'm going to try to make it down. If we can get to the cold, really get into it, the rest might be easier. That's the only part I need to survive, getting down. We'll get lucky. We have to, eventually, don't we?
The sickness. We should have seen it coming. That's the thing. We had every reason to. After COVID, after the pneumonia outbreak, after the measles flare-up they stopped at the Canadian border, we'd gotten good at this. Bird flu variants that never made it out of Southeast Asia, a mutated pox strain that researchers flagged, sequenced, and had a vaccine for before the press could run a panic cycle. It almost became routine. Doctors got hard. The system got fast. Looking back at the early COVID years, the lockdowns, the conspiracy theories, the toilet paper, it's almost funny now. Quaint. Like reading about medieval physicians and their theories of bad air. Historians will probably call this the century of plagues. They keep showing up, keep finding their way into the news cycle, into our lives, into the ICUs. Some people don't make it out. Those people end up on the cold tables in the basement. But we stopped them. Over and over, we stopped them. So we got comfortable. And then this one came along. Nobody had a name for it that stuck. With COVID, you had the acronym, the branding almost. This one resisted that. Doctors who saw what it did to its victims didn't want to give it a catchy name. In the general population, people just started calling it the sickness. Old-fashioned word. Nobody coordinated on it. It just surfaced everywhere at once in a dozen languages. A word you reach for when you don't want to say the real thing out loud. We missed it because of 2 things: low transmissibility and a long incubation period. By the time anyone traced it to the water supply, it was already everywhere. Not just one city, not one country, everywhere. You could drink contaminated water for years before anything happened, and even after infection, you'd show no symptoms for months. During that window, you were shedding billions of copies of the pathogen every time you used the bathroom. Copies that laughed at antibiotics, shrugged off UV treatment, were unbothered by chlorine. The trade-off for all that resilience was that only 1 in a million, maybe 1 in a billion of those copies could actually breach a new host's immune system and take hold. Slow, patient, everywhere. When the incubation ended, it didn't ease in. It arrived all at once: fever, delirium, convulsions. The delirium cleared fast, which was the cruelest part. Nobody wanted to be conscious for what came next. We'd gotten used to seeing people collapse in the street. The fever would just take them down mid-stride. At first, ambulances came. Then clinics set up triage tents. Then, we stopped pretending we could hospitalize everyone and started calling next of kin instead. People started wearing ID tags with emergency contact numbers. I've been wearing mine for 3 years. I've updated the contact twice. Mortality rate, 70 to 80%. Slow, agonizing,
The kind that makes you understand why people throughout history invented gods specifically to explain suffering. The patients who made it, the 20 or 30%, you'd see them in the ward. Researchers standing over them with notebooks, epidemiologists, biologists, anyone who could get credentials. And on the other side of the curtain, family members sitting with their hands in their laps, quietly grateful it wasn't them this time, that the water they drank was inactive, praying it stayed that way. Nobody talked about clean water anymore. That ship had sailed. You hoped for inactive water. You hoped today wasn't the day. What it did to the body, I'll try to describe, though I'm not a doctor. I picked up the vocabulary online, the way everyone did. The fever spiked first. Then the muscles started, random contractions, violent ones. They stopped restraining patients after the first wave of cases because the restraints were causing more damage than the disease. Wrists snapping, spines hyperextending. Better to let them move. Then the necrosis, or the sepsis, probably both in sequence. Flesh dying in patches, going soft, detaching. Bone doing the same, softening, rotting, fusing back wrong. Researchers couldn't explain it in plain language. Every time I tried to read the actual mechanism, I'd hit a paragraph of Latin and close the tab. What it meant in practice: the bones didn't disappear. They died, went soft, and then, somehow, regrew. Fused back together at random angles, under impossible geometries. And then the disease passed, and the pain lifted. And whoever was left looked at their body and found it had been rearranged. They were immune after that, permanently. Every subsequent pathogen, every cold, every flu, every cancer cell, destroyed on contact. Their DNA didn't shorten, didn't fray, didn't age. The sickness, in its grotesque way, had given them exactly what humans had always wanted. The survivors were immortal. The vaccine came out of a Canadian-Japanese research partnership. It was elegant work. Years of microscope time, bad backs, failing eyesight. They found the mechanism. They found the answer to it. For modern science, producing a vaccine is straightforward once you know what you're fighting. 2 weeks from publication to clinical production. But the vaccine prevented the disease entirely, which meant it also prevented the survival, which meant the people who took it would live normal lives, normal span, normal end, 100% mortality rate eventually, the way it always was, quiet, painless, certain. That's why I'm sitting here staring at a small, disposable syringe filled with slightly cloudy yellow liquid. The clinic handed it to me without making eye contact. No paperwork, no record. They have a lot of them. Demand dropped sharply after the Canadian-Japanese paper came out. They're giving them away now, practically. Good odds either way, if you think about it a certain way. 70 to 80% chance of dying badly. 20 to 30% chance of living forever in a body that no longer quite works the way a body should. Or a quiet life, a normal death, all your bones where you left them. Behind me, 2 sounds. My mother, knocking. My wife, breathing. My mother survived. I don't need to look to see her. I have the image memorized. Her spine softened and reset at an angle, head tilted so her face is nearly upside down when she crawls toward me. Left leg, foot, knee, and the section between them all touching the floor simultaneously. 3 points of contact. Right leg, no bone below the knee, just something that moves like a thick cable. Left elbow reversed, fingers permanently clenched and unclenching. Right arm the same, fingers hanging limp, no bones left in them at all. She moves on all 4s. She eats from a low bowl. She told me last week that the cabbage rolls I made were almost as good as hers. She loves me. She is going to live forever. My wife didn't have time to decide. The sickness came without asking. Now she wants it to stop. She can't speak anymore, can't scream. She stopped being able to do that weeks ago. She communicates in a register below language. She looks at me with eyes that still know who I am and asks me to end it. And I hold the knife, and I cannot. My mother knocks her way across the floor and asks me to stay. I look at the syringe. I don't know. The knocking continues. Bone on hardwood, patient and even, like a clock that will never stop.